Welcome to the Process Podcast. If you can see behind me here, well, I guess all of this is a couch, and we are trying to be more comfortable. And I was very uncomfortable doing this discussion because one cheek is now numb. But I was also comfortable talking to Rue and Karan about their teamwork doing the HYROX doubles races and them preparing for their qualifying Chicago Worlds in 8 weeks' time as of the recording of this podcast. If you are a person who is looking to do HYROX not as an individual, but on a team or as a doubles, we wanted to release this episode to give you tips on how you find the right partner, how you can communicate and plan and strategize and make it a positive experience where you can push your limits, but also have a really good time with people who you can trust and who you can lean on to help see you through the finish line. This is an awesome episode about teamwork and friendship, and I'm all about all those things. Let's kick it off with Rue and Karan. Welcome to another rousing podcast.
That's how we're gonna start.
I don't know. I don't know how to. Here's the truth. I've never done a podcast conversation yet at this new couch setup, and it is very comfortable. It's doing well for my sciatica at the moment, but at the same time, I don't know about this whole couch thing. I'm still trying to figure it out. Trying to like get my like wings before I can fly. So maybe that's the first question: is how do you guys like the feeling of doing a podcast on a couch?
It's my first podcast, so it's better than anything I've ever experienced.
Rue, awesome, good start.
It's a great couch. It's pretty comfortable.
I'm always nervous when it comes to change, and I preferred the old setup, but change is good.
Yeah.
You know,
Bro, it's just a
comfort
couch.
zone, and I'm out of my comfort zone now. The two of you look comfortable with your legs. I don't know what to do with my legs or my hands.
Do you want to cross your legs real quick?
No, I'm good.
Okay, because I'm like stuck in it.
So I don't mind. So this is a good setup. I like it. 2.0 and gel. Shout out to you guys. A lot of hard work has gone into this new office space in the podcast room. So
Lovely.
Happy to be the first, not the first ones. No.
Yeah.
That will be the first one there, but
Okay.
Ed needs to break that in. So
Right.
we're gonna.
Well, then let's talk about the subject that we are here to talk about today. As your host, I'm going to talk about the subject of HYROX Doubles and what that is and how you guys went from people who didn't know each other to going to the HYROX World Championships this year in Chicago. That's right. So those of you podcast listeners who are familiar, obviously you've heard my voice before as a host, Chris. We got Karan here, who's a frequent guest talking about CrossFit and his hybrid training schedule now. We do have a first-time guest in Rue. Could you please introduce yourself, who you are, what you usually do in terms of working out, what you do professionally, and how you're doing today?
I think if you ask me to introduce myself and then you ask Karan to introduce me, we'll give you two very different answers.
Ooh, okay.
So my name is Rue. Hi. I train here at Coastal Fitness. I used to be a CrossFitter. Well, an attempted CrossFitter, amateur CrossFitter. And I joined Coastal doing the process, which actually Chris introduced me to as the process
That's right.
program manager. And I decided to train at Coastal just to have a better sort of training environment where everyone's doing the same program. And then through that, fell in love with weightlifting, which is my one true passion and what I usually train in and compete in.
Yeah.
If you ask Karan, what would you say about my training regime?
Rue is a hybrid athlete
I'm not
through and through.
No.
I know she claims to be a weightlifter, and she's a damn good one, but she can't stay away from hybrid racing. So she's a hybrid racer through and through. But no, I mean, how would I define Rue? Beers, EDM, music, racing, weightlifting. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
I'm a full-time corporate girly as well, so I'm kind of offended you started with beers.
So I don't know that side of Rue. So
Beers after the corporate relationship.
Yes, I work in investment banking full-time, and then the rest of my time I'm either here or maybe drinking beers.
I'm good with that. Today I want to talk to you guys about HYROX Doubles, and our listeners might be familiar with HYROX, but we've never talked about HYROX Doubles itself. Who of you has a really good idea of how to concisely explain how HYROX Doubles works?
So I think we can start with what the singles look like, right? You have 8 kilometers running and you have 8 functional stations. So you do a kilometer of running followed by a functional station. The functional stations go in the order of 1K ski, 50 meter sled push, 50 meter sled pull, 80 meter burpee broad jump, 1K row, 200 meter farmer's carry, 100 meter sandbag lunge, and then 100 wall balls, right? And you have a kilometer of a run before each station. In singles, you do everything by yourself, you run by yourself, you do all the stations, the full work. In doubles, you run together, so you both accumulate 8 kilometers each, and then the stations you split up however you want.
So it's just really a call on the day or whatever you guys predetermine of who does what in terms of the distance on the rower and the ski erg, the number of burpees or the distance of the burpees, how much pushing and pulling on the sled. All that is up to you two.
Yeah, definitely. We don't do it on the day. We have a strategy going in. So we do sims before the race, or we train before the race, leading into the race. And we have an idea of our strengths and weaknesses. So we have like plan A, plan B, plan C in terms of how we divide up the meters on the row and the ski, or who's going to open on which station depending on if that station gasses us or not. But on the day, we make adjustments on the fly. And that I think we'll get into when it comes to like communicating during the race and making adjustments as needed.
Okay. Yeah. And that's like the meat and potatoes of today's conversation is, you know, what are the good takeaways of, first of all, finding a good doubles partner and how to make that partnership work in the preparation of and in the race day itself. Rue, before you were doing doubles with Karan, did you ever do a solo HYROX?
I did. So I have done, before training with Karan, I had done 2 mixed doubles as well. And I really enjoyed that experience. So the third time I did it, I thought, oh, I'll try the singles, see how it goes. It's not for me.
Why is that?
I find that people often think that singles is harder. I wouldn't necessarily say it's harder just because you have to do everything by yourself. I think it's just different. Of course, you have the kind of aspect of you have to do everything by yourself. So that definitely means endurance-wise, from my perspective, you really have to step up to the ballpark to make sure that I'm pacing myself well. I can manage all the stations myself. I'm breaking this the way that I need to. But when I did singles compared to doubles, everything sort of just felt a bit slower to me. And I think that's because I knew that I had to take my time with things because I didn't have a partner that maybe I could rely on to carry me through some of the stations. So I'm sure we'll touch on like strengths and weaknesses later, but Karan definitely is stronger at some things than me. So on those runs before, I know, okay, I can pick up the pace here because he's going to carry us through the next station, and sometimes vice versa, depending on how we feel or what the station is.
So the idea of leaning on each other and almost kind of to an extent, depending on each other to kind of see the difficulties through.
Yes. And I think we're getting better and better at it every time we compete is sort of nonverbal communication, as it were. I think Karan can definitely see times where I'm flagging and times where he might be flagging, or if one of us needs a breather. We're getting much better sort of reading that and offering the additional support rather than before it would sort of be like, Karan, can you sort of take
so
this?
It's understanding how to communicate, not just when to recognize when someone's in need, but how to communicate that in a way that works for both.
Yeah, exactly.
And it sounds like what you're already saying is it's not something that you guys figured out from the first race. It's had to have happened through all the number of races that you've done. So let's kind of peel things back layer by layer. How did you guys end up becoming partners? And you know, before we started recording, I didn't know about this of how you guys actually sort of met on at a HYROX. Who wants to share that story?
Karan does.
Okay, I'll go. We did meet in HYROX November 2022, Hong Kong, but we didn't formally know each other.
Right.
It was just a passing by thing. Although I passed by very slowly at the burpee broad jump station.
He was actually moving backwards.
That was your strategy, right?
That was my strategy, yeah. I mean, to that point of Rue, I mean, it's basically intensity, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing singles, you have to slow down your runs and your pacing. But if you're doing doubles, the intensity picks up because you have someone to split the work with, which then means you just have to run faster and you have less time to rest because someone else is working.
Right.
So the intensity just picks up with the doubles and in the relay, it's an even more intense situation. Although you're just doing two stations and 2 kilometers.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to how we ended up being partners. So I knew of Rue because she used to work with Ant on the process programming when she was doing CrossFit.
Okay.
And then I think she started dropping into Coastal Fitness last year sometime during the Open, and she was just dropping in. And I used to call her a traitor because she used to go back to Cabs and train there as well.
You called her what?
I call her a traitor.
A traitor.
Yeah.
Sweet.
'Cause-
So like, a great relationship. off the
Yeah,
bat.
it was nice. I thought, what a brilliant guy.
And then she was dropping in for the Open last year. She did the Open workouts here.
Okay.
And then she finally, after the Open, transitioned to Coastal as a full-time member. And she used to do the 6:15 classes, which I usually coach in the mornings. And then they ended up forming a team for Calais Games. And then I was coaching them. I ended up working with them quite a bit. And that's where I guess we sort of like connected and bonded. And I sort of knew her abilities and capacity, and it's very similar to mine in terms of like, running paces and like strengths and weaknesses. So I think that's very important, finding a partner who's a similar ability level to you. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, if you want to do a race for fun, you can partner up with your best friend or your significant other. And then, but it's going to be fun for one person and not so fun for the other because there's going to be a weak link. But if you can partner up with someone, if you're doing it for like strategic reasons or you're looking to podium or for an athletic pursuit, then partnering up with someone who's on the similar wavelength in terms of capabilities, capacity, pacing, whatever it might be, helps a lot.
Well, that's an interesting one to me because I wouldn't argue because I'm very unfamiliar with HYROX because I've never done the race myself. But when we're talking about a partnership or forming a team, wouldn't you want something complementary where someone has the strengths in one thing that can help fill the gap of someone else's weaknesses? You're saying you should have similar strengths and weaknesses would be the winning strategy.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. You're coming from like a CrossFit kind of thinking where when you're making a CrossFit team, I think it helps complementing each other's strengths and weaknesses. But in HYROX, half the race is running, but you actually spend more than half the time running.
Okay.
Right? Let's say it takes you an hour, 10 minutes to finish HYROX. For example, you spend about 40 to 45 minutes running and 25, 30 minutes on the stations. So, and you're running together. So you need to have similar capacities and pacing on the runs.
Okay.
And that definitely helps. To your point, yes, you can partner up with someone who's, let's say, a different pace or ability to you. That's completely fine. But then that would mean the stronger runner will then take on more workload in the stations so that the weaker runner can then catch their breath. Okay. So that happens a lot. Like, Ant and Tammy did the mixed doubles, and Tammy and Ryan did the mixed doubles as well. Rylan. And usually in a men and in a mixed doubles, man and woman pairing.
Yes, a man and a woman.
The man should be able to take more of the workload in the stations. Yeah. Anywhere in the ratio of 60-40 or
because
70-30.
Of the strength aspect of it.
Yeah, the strength aspect, and usually the guy is the stronger runner in pairs that I have seen. But I think in our case, we're more or less similar in terms of running.
Well, I want to hear from Rue is like, Karan saying you guys had the same ability levels, what he recognized in you when you, and I don't know who reached out to whom first, but did you think you were also at the similar ability levels?
I'm just going to say that I don't think I was Karan's first choice. He definitely wanted to partner with Chunky first. And he told me that in a group chat. I have receipts. He was like, hey, Chunky, if you're not going to go with Angel or someone else, like we should partner up. And Chunky was like, nah, bro. And then I was like, hey, I could do it, kind of half jokingly. And he was like, pfft. And I was like, phew, I'm good.
So just for context, Chunky is a male. So you're thinking of doing a men's doubles from the onset. So then how did this happen?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking to get back into HYROX last year. Yeah. And after men's pro, I've been traumatized by it enough that I wanted to.
It's PTSD.
I have PTSD. I wanted to, dip my toe in the water again by easing in with doubles. Okay. And I never thought about mixed doubles because I always viewed it as something that you do with your significant other. So I was thinking more of like a strategic standpoint.
So Karan didn't ask his girlfriend.
We're not getting into that topic. We're staying away from that topic. But yeah, so I was thinking of like, okay, who's on a similar, level as me when it comes to HYROX and running from in our gym, who's a male. And Chunky was part of that Callus team that I was coaching and helping. So I asked, and I'm quite amazed that you remember that story. Yeah, very true.
I don't forget anything.
But Rue did, volunteer and be like, hey, let's do it together. And I didn't.
Okay, so
I didn't say,
so you suggested first.
Correct.
Why was that?
I don't know. I think I just have a habit of volunteering for things that seem fun, and it seemed fun.
Yeah.
And I don't think Karan and I were really that close at that point, but I was like, well, we get along, and he's pretty good at just general fitness and someone who I think like would push me to want to actually do the race well, because I'd done the mixed doubles before, but it was sort of more like, oh, shall we just like, have a bit of fun and show up on the day and have a good time. And it was really great for what it is, because I do think HYROX is just like a very fun day in general, even for spectators. But this time I was like, okay, well, if I wanted to do it seriously, I think this is someone who would compliment me, not just performance wise, but actually Karan and I are very different in kind of our approach to strategizing, and Karan loves strategy. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
So if you
It's
follow
a human spreadsheet.
he really is. That's that computer engineering in him. And I'm not, especially because I think we get different gratification out of fitness and our fitness journeys. So for me, as someone who works full-time corporate, this is where I don't want to use my mind. So I'm a very good partner for Karan, because I sort of just let him dictate whatever we're doing. So it'll be like, hey, what kind of approach do you want to take to training? I don't know. I don't care. And that's great for someone who's type A when it comes to training, because Karan is like, excellent. We can do everything I say that we need to do. And even when it comes to race day, of course, we, like Karan mentioned, we wing things and it depends on feel, but it's really sort of, okay, I feel like I can trust Karan to show up, not always on time, but show up with a plan of like, this is our warm up. This is the timing. This is like what we're going to try to do. And then if this fails, we're going to have this and this. And it's kind of like every single iteration is already mapped out in his mind. And I hope that he's grateful for the fact I'm like, all right, whatever you say.
So what it sounds like, the reason why your guys' partnership works so well is that from a physical capability standpoint, you're both pretty similar. And that means that you guys can share the pacing together, and you guys can overall kind of share the workload on the strength and whatever stations. But from a planning and strategic standpoint, that's where you guys are complementary, where, Karan has got like the master key to making this work. And Rue, you're just kind of going with the flow of like, if you say so, let's go for it. And you're not butting heads as two type A personalities. And that's for what you guys works really well.
Yeah. I mean, and it's also good to like recognize what you're grateful in your partner. And that's what I would appreciate that Karan does for us as a partnership.
Yeah, I think first off, I'm very grateful, that you do give me the, I guess, freedom and space to, I guess, take a bit more control when it comes to like strategizing and thinking about warm-ups and strategy and stuff like that. But, we have our roles within the team. Yeah. And, Rudin mentioned what she does very well within the teamwork, which is like, she's a team manager. So she's in charge of like registering us for races.
I'm his secretary.
Oh, right. Because Karan, you do have a history of doing things kind of late, a little bit forgetting things of executive importance. Yeah.
So she handles the logistics back end, and then on the day as well, she's our pacer. Okay. So she makes sure that we're not going out too hot. Making sure that we're holding our pace. And I have a tendency to go out hot sometimes. Yeah. So we have our roles within the team. Yeah. And we complement each other that way. Yeah,
and that's a lot of things that we're talking about with game day, and that's where the rubber meets the road in terms of preparation. But for you guys, Ruth saying yourself that as a corporate girly, you have a lot of time to be at the office, and Karan is a coach here at Coastal Fitness, so he has a lot of time to be able to train. When you guys are prepping for a race, how much time are you guys spent training together? How much time you guys spent training on your own? And how do you guys make that work in terms of prepping for the race with a mixture of solo and team training time?
I think for us, we are still figuring out the perfect formula, I would say. We try to train together at least once a week on the weekends. And I think especially for Chicago, as we get closer, it will pick up.
Yeah.
And we're just going to have to make sacrifices in our own personal lives and training time to commit to this, which is something we have already openly discussed. And I think another great thing about our partnership is that we are really honest with each other. And like, I'm not going to say it's always sunshine and roses. Like, we've definitely brought things up with each other where it's like, hey, I didn't appreciate this, or like, you know, in the future going forwards, can we do things like this? But it's good to be able to have that personal relationship where it's not going to be like, well, I'm going to throw the towel in because of something that I didn't enjoy.
Yeah.
But I would say we try to train together once a week, but it does require a lot of sacrifice. Like, we have to give up time that maybe we wouldn't usually do just to make sure that the timings work, because our careers are so different and because our schedules are so different. So I usually train super early because there's no guarantee I can train at lunchtime. I don't know what time I'll get out of work, because it can be, I can finish work anywhere from 6 p.m., but sometimes I work till 10. Yeah. So the morning is my time, but Karan is not a morning girly. He's an afternoon girly. So
I mean, to his credit, he does the 5:15 class often.
I can't train at that time, but I'm up at 4 coaching. So
yes, sorry, he's
very different.
He's not a morning training girly, I should say. But yeah, we have to sort of make sure that we can slot in different times. But I would say we both train very, very frequently.
Nice.
But together once a week. And I think as we get closer to Chicago or the race, I think 2 times probably is a good amount of time.
Is there a possibility for people to have a good partnership on race day if they don't have an opportunity to train together?
Yeah, I think definitely so.
How would you make it work?
I think for majority of last year, we didn't actually train together because, you know, another great thing about our partnership is that we've given each other freedom to pursue other things outside of HYROX.
Like beer.
Like drinking
Yes,
beer,
please.
but you know, outside of, you know, her professional life, which my professional life and personal life, athletic life, are kind of intertwined because I work here, right? But she has her corporate life.
Yep.
But outside of that, even with training, we have the freedom to like pursue other competitions and other aspects of fitness. With like, for me, you know, last year was all about CrossFit and taking part in different competitions. You know, not once did she ever say, you know, why aren't you doing more HYROX? You should, you know, we should be focusing on HYROX and like doing less CrossFit. And the same thing with Rue is like, she has weightlifting aspirations and goals that she has for this year, you know, and I don't want to take away from that.
Yeah.
So I think now is the 8 weeks that we are putting more time into HYROX. But before that, you know, I think Rue trains 5-6 times a week, and they were mainly predominantly Olympic weightlifting sessions. So I think that is another great aspect of our, I guess, partnership. But going back to your point of like how a partnership can work if you don't have the time to train with each other. I think last year, for 3 races we did last year, the only training we did was a simulation. So 2 weeks before the race.
100% simulation?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
about-
80%.
80%
Yeah.
to 100%, depending on how far out we were and the frequency of the races we did. But apart from that, we probably trained 6 times to 8 times in total last year for 3 races.
Okay.
So this year we're gonna, in the next 8 weeks, we're gonna, you know, up the frequency because we have Worlds coming up and we have targets set, and you know, we're not looking to make up the numbers in Chicago, and it's a big deal for both of us. So that frequency will increase.
When you're doing things like training on your own, do you just kind of let each other? Can you just trust each other to do whatever workload is needed to be able to kind of keep the engine humming towards a good HYROX performance, or do you guys actually plan out? All right, in week 1, we have to make sure we each do a session of this type of thing. What does that look like in terms of like the training, I guess, plan?
Yeah, so for the next 8 weeks, we have pretty much a program mapped out.
Okay.
I've fully gone hybrid. So I'm doing 10 sessions.
That's right.
10 sessions a week.
Hashtag hybrid.
Yeah, 10 sessions a week. But off the 10 sessions, a lot of them are zone 2 sessions or accessory sessions that I can remove from my training depending on my fatigue and my energy levels. And 3 are like strength sessions. There are core sessions in there that are purely for HYROX, and off those sessions they're on Rue's program as well. And I think Rue's split right now is 3 to 4 HYROX sessions, and not necessarily HYROX in the sense that one session is still upper body strength because we still have time to get her strength up. And then there's one with like run intervals, there's one with row intervals and like lactate threshold interval work, and then will be like half partial simulations. And I think Rue still has 2 sessions a week where she's doing her Olympic weightlifting.
For the HYROX stuff, did you guys write this together? One of you wrote it, or you guys are following a template? Mastermind over here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm putting my my coaching hat on, and yeah.
Is this how it's always been, or just for this?
Oh, just for Chicago. So we're doing a 6 + 2 week block, 6 weeks leading into Bangkok, and then a +2 weeks into Chicago.
Okay.
So we haven't had any structured training before this 8-week. Before that, it's always been a couple of running intervals together and or simulations.
Yeah, we were sort of just both doing LPC, then plus some running together. Yeah.
So our base level fitness is what we relied on last year. And that got us on the podium at Singapore and got us our world's ticket.
So, I mean, that's one thing that I always wonder is, could you be a general strength and conditioning athlete or hobbyist or a CrossFitter and expect to do well in HYROX? I don't mean just be able to finish it, because I think it seems like people of any type of fitness can finish a HYROX, but we're talking about performing well in terms of a really good pace and not blowing up on any of the strength stations. You know, to what extent do you need specialized HYROX programming to do well in the sport?
I think the answer really is it depends, right? Like if you ask that question about CrossFit, I think it really is sometimes the luck of the draw. I think definitely people who are more slow twitch, who have experience in sort of endurance events. So before I did CrossFit, I took a bit of time out of CrossFit because I injured my shoulder and I got into trail running, and that gave me a really good base to start doing HYROX again, which is, I guess, where the running or passion for running came from. But if you are someone who is kind of more aerobically inclined, you can show up and you can do a good job. But we know, like, if we look at CrossFit, there are different types of CrossFit athletes. There are some who are bigger than others who just smash every single Olympic lift. And there are some who also just have engines that go on forever. So the answer really is it depends on the kind of person. But I think with that kind of training, yes, you can still do well, but it really depends on who you are as an athlete and what kind of capacity you have to be able to sort of rock up and do something that is much longer than what you usually do. So I think, Karan, you were more doing CrossFit before, and I think it was still almost a surprise that this is still a really long time, even though it's only an hour, because as CrossFitters, you don't really do anything over sort of 20 minutes. And
there's like barely any running at all.
I mean, I think there's more and more, but if we look at the CrossFitters who are picking up HYROX now, they're still smashing it out of the park. But that's not to say that they would ever beat somebody who is, say, an ultra marathon runner who could probably run 4-minute kilometers forever.
Yeah, that's some very good points that Rue made. You know, if you have a strong background in running, you have an advantage in HYROX.
Yeah, I think you had about 40 minutes out of an hour
10
would be running.
Exactly.
So it's essentially a running race.
Yeah, for example, in CrossFit, if you have a strong background in Olympic weightlifting, you're already ahead of the curve, right? Because CrossFit is a strength sport for people that are weak, like myself, but CrossFit is an endurance sport if you're strong.
Okay.
Right. So having a good base level fitness coming from an endurance background or running background definitely helps in HYROX. But adding on to Rue's point is like HYROX is getting competitive with each race with every year, right? The rules are changing. They're getting stricter with movement standards. The competition is getting fiercer with each race. So for sure, last year, you could rock up with base level fitness from other sport domains and expect to do well.
Okay.
And we ended up podiuming, and it was on the Asian circuit, which is slightly less competitive compared to, let's say, the Europe and the American regions.
Yeah.
But now even the Asian races are picking up, and they are getting more competitive times. So if you now want to excel in the sport of HYROX and you want to podium and you want to make worlds and be competitive at worlds, you need to be training specific to HYROX.
Okay.
Right? You gotta. It's specificity.
It's just like any other, standardized sport. If you want to do well in that sport, you have to prioritize that sport in your training.
Exactly, and there's a methodology to do that with how you structure your training and your program. If you have, let's say, 5 training opportunities in a week, and if you're doing CrossFit 3 of those 5 times, and you're only giving in 2 of the sessions to HYROX, someone who's dedicating 5 sessions purely at getting better for HYROX with more functional station specific touches, lactate work, threshold work, and running interval work, running a lot more zone 2 work, because HYROX is a 1 hour plus race. You're going to do better than the person that's doing 3 sessions of CrossFit and 2 HYROX sessions.
I wanted to quickly interrupt this episode with a quick shout out to our sponsors, Today Well Spent. I've been using this journal for 2 years, and it has made a massive impact on my physical, but mostly my mental well-being. It is a guided journal backed by neuro and behavioral science, which I actually didn't know at the time. It has questions for you to answer at the start of the day, at the end of the day, end of every week, end of every month. And it's brought so much self-awareness to me of the things that positively and negatively impact my life. So if you're someone who cares about your physical and your mental well-being, which I think you do because you listen to this podcast, then go and grab yourself a Today Well Spent. Use the discount code THEPROCESS, one word in capitals, to get your discount.
Okay. So then on that note, now that you guys are prepping, and you said you have 8 weeks until Chicago?
Yeah.
And then you have a tune-up race in Bangkok in how long from now?
5.5 weeks. May 25th.
Okay. So that's why you said a 6-week and then a 2-week. Yeah. On that note, now that you guys have the eyes on the prize of Chicago doing as best as you can, I assume better than you've ever done before.
Yeah.
And you guys have lofty goals there because that's what World Championships is all about, right? Does that mean the things that you guys were previously passionate about, Rue, with your weightlifting, Karan, with you just getting stronger, generally speaking, is that taking a backseat right now, or is that contributing to HYROX?
A bit of both.
Yeah.
So definitely dialing down the weightlifting training, but I do want to keep it up because that's something that I want to pursue next year. And of course, with weightlifting, you're still doing kind of your basic strength training as part of that. And it kind of coincides with, I said to my weightlifting coach, I need to focus more on sort of strength over technique at the moment. And so I'm doing a strength block where majority of it is actually a lot of bodybuilding, which I'm hoping will help to contribute to getting stronger for HYROX. So
Like, for example, like a sled pull.
yeah, exactly. And Karan is also programming some of that stuff for me as well. So it's taking a back seat. It's not going away completely because I think there are still aspects that I can use to help with HYROX training, but I definitely am going to pick up more running and more cardio based exercises. Although I did take a very long break from running. Karan dragged me out to do intervals last week and I was not happy.
What kind of intervals are we talking about?
We went running along the waterfront, 1.5 kilometer intervals. I wasn't happy.
How close to race pace were you guys trying to hit?
Not too close. It was more just to get back into training together.
Okay.
It was nice. It was a nice morning, but
Yeah.
Yeah, she was also nursing a cold. She was a bit run down from Taipei, so
Okay.
because we did do the relay
Oh, that's
too.
right.
We
Yeah,
did the relay.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was a rough
So
weekend.
you guys did the doubles race, and then you guys just got roped into doing a relay race on the spot, or was that part of the plan as well?
Well, one of the things that Karan and I actually have in common is that we like to pretend that we're chill, but we're really not. So we thought, okay, yeah, it'll be really fun to do like a fun relay. And, we had 2 other members from Coastal here, and we're like, oh, we'll have loads of fun. We'll have a beer after. It'll be really fun. And then on the day we get to the start line, Karan's like, right, sub 4-minute kilometers, right? I'm like, hell yeah, let's do it. And we
What did
basically...
your other teammates think of that?
They were in for fun, and they were like, Karan, if you cramp up, don't worry about it. Take your time around the track. There's no pressure. We're just doing this for fun. We're here for the food and the beer. After the race. So, but we're competitive by nature.
Yeah.
So we rocked up at the start line. We're like,
no chill. No chill whatsoever. But my favorite moment from that race is that I did the first station, which I didn't realize meant like, okay, cool, I get to start in the start line. So if you don't know relays well, and I know this is about doubles, so just a sidebar, like you don't start at the start line. There is a relay start for people who are doing any other station than the first one. But if you're first, then you get to go through the sort of starting arches, the blue arches.
The Red Bull
the
arch?
Red Bull arch.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I was ready to go. I was like, you know what? I'm going to win my section of the relay regardless of what my teammates want to do. I wasn't going to win the relay, but I wanted to win like my station.
Yeah.
And so I went straight in. And when we do doubles, it is very competitive, actually. So everybody's trying to get to the front and make sure they have a good spot. So I went straight in. Nobody else came in. It was just me. So I'm sure it's a cool photo. And then the next person to come in opened the kind of little thing that gets you to the Red Bull, and it was a girl in a hot dog costume, and she must have been like 4'9". And so I was there like with my pro LSKD double suit and like my hair all tied up, and then this little girl came and stood next to me and was like, hi.
So like you were like the pro runner coming along to the turkey trot.
I don't know if I was one of those people who was like, I need to win the warm up and I'm going to beat my whole family at the turkey trot. And then she was just there in her hot dog Costco costume.
And then you just proceeded to stiff arm her out of the way.
She was fast. She was on my heels for a little while. I was like, this hot dog is going to catch me.
So on that note, racing, race day. Again, something I have no idea what it looks like, although I've seen it in photos. How many races have you guys done to date? Let's just say purely the doubles. Were you
together?
Yeah.
4, 5?
4 or 5?
4.
Okay, let's say 4. At this point, do you guys feel like you've got it locked down the way that you guys compete? Or is that still a work in progress?
I think together, yes. But I think there's always room to get better, of course.
Yeah, I think something we touched upon earlier was, communication.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that needs to be mentioned is that we're very open and honest with each other, and there's no like sense of ego. So, I tell Rue, like, if I'm feeling, let's say I'm going to cramp up or I'm feeling fatigued and I can't keep the pace, I have no shame and ego in saying, okay, Rue, we got to slow down.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you're in a partnership or when you're, let's say in a competitive environment, you don't want to be that person to be like, I need to slow down.
Yeah.
Right? Your ego's like, I'm going to try to keep up. And then it's too late. And then the race is gone, right?
Yeah.
So I've always been, and Ruth's the same way as well. So we're like been open and honest about communicating our thoughts and our feelings during the race, but also before and after the race.
Okay.
And like Ruth touched upon is like having those hard conversations, and not holding back. You want to be able to speak your mind freely, and there have been times where we've spoken openly and freely, and at the time we don't want to hear that stuff, but those are the things that you need to have, knowing at the back of your mind that the other person has your best interest at heart, and also the team's best interest at heart, and knowing that the overarching goal is that we care about each other and we want to do well together as a team. We don't take that as like criticism, but more like constructive feedback for us to get better.
Yeah.
So that I think that's huge. And that communication plays into while we're racing. And last year I have no shame in admitting that she was the stronger runner. I was the weak link. When she could pick the pace up in like kilometers 6, 7, 8, I had to tell her to slow down because I was
Yeah.
going to cramp up. Because like she mentioned, she came from a marathon background. So
Yeah.
she's used to running 2-3 hours, 3-hour plus races, 4-hour races, right? In CrossFit, what do? We do 20 minutes, 30 minutes at tops, not even 30 minutes.
Right.
So for me, adjusting to a regular 1 hour plus races was a big deal. So I was cramping up a lot. But since the start of the year, I've been doing a lot more running, and I've been able to catch up my pace and my running. So having that communication and not being afraid to be honest and vulnerable with your partner goes a long way.
One thing that I'd like to hear like an actual example of is, I imagine that with the race, even though it's long, the communication can't really be that long itself, right? It needs to be very direct, and sometimes you're out of breath, so it might come off as a bit curt or whatever. Can you give me an example of what that communication looks like during the race?
Yeah, so it's literally a few words. When we go past the in arch, where I say 1 lap, so we have 1 more lap. And then when we're entering the in arch, I say water, so that we know that we're going to the hydration station and then going into the functional movement station.
You mean most of the communication falls on you, or?
So he handles logistics, like we said.
Okay.
So
Strategy.
he does counting, he does strategy. But if we want to communicate with each other as well, it's very similar. And I think we're getting better at finding the right phrases. So it'll be like, yeah, to the right. If I'm saying like, I'm to the right and I'm going to come onto the rower to the right. So he knows he has to go left to get off the rower. Or if we're running, it might be like, I need you to pick it up, or I need you to take this, or I'm struggling.
Yeah.
Can you pick up more of this?
Let's take the example of I need you to pick it up, right? Where you're saying that to Karan. Are you saying it not being sure if he can, or are you confident that he can if you say it? Like, what's going through your head?
I feel like he
as you
can.
go over? Okay.
But that being said, when it comes to his point of not having an ego, I'm also not going to be upset if he says, I can't right now.
Oh, okay.
And there are times where I've said to him, we need to slow down. I'm tired. Or we need to slow down because I know one of us is not going to be able to hold this pace.
Okay.
Because someone is going to have to start the sled.
Yeah.
And I think the sleds are our main concern area anyway, as
For both of
athletes.
you?
Well, as athletes who just are naturally a little bit smaller comparative to, other CrossFitters.
For sure.
I think that is the area that really we need to focus on when it comes to making sure that we can do that under fatigue.
What does miscommunication look like? And because I can only imagine that's probably happened before.
Oh, it happened in our last race.
Okay.
When you were starting to get a cramp, and I thought he said,
yeah.
I thought he said to me, Rue, I need you to finish it. But I thought he said, Rue, I will finish it. So I thought,
Wait, finish it as in what?
finish
Farmer's
the
carry.
station. Yeah,
Oh,
we were
okay.
doing farmer's carry, and I thought he said, Rue, I'll finish it. So I thought, that's gentlemanly. I've only been going for about 5 meters. So I was like, sick. I put them down, and he's like, what? But by then he was too in the zone, so he just picked
Yeah.
them up and kept going
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah. Okay.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think it also comes down to like non-verbal communication.
Yeah. What does that mean for you guys?
Just looking at the other person's, breathing, or hearing the breathing, or like just looking at our posture.
I see.
We can read each other quite well in terms of like if we're fatigued or like we can't hold the paces.
Yeah.
For me, it's usually my calf or my quad or my hamstring that starts cramping up, and I say I'm cramping. For Rue, it's usually
Cramping.
for Rue, it's usually her side stitch. With her breathing.
Oh, so you guys have a good read on what would be the first domino.
Yeah.
It's literally like
It's a body language thing.
Yeah.
it's literally like usually during the second, third, fourth run is where Rue might get a side stitch.
Yeah.
And for me, it's the 6th, 7th, 8th run where I might like start getting a cramp in my lower limbs.
Yeah.
So we sort of like know that, understand that, and we know like going into certain stations, we gotta slow into those stations or
Yeah.
pick up the pace going out the stations. Even like our verbal communication, examples would be like if the other person's feeling good, be like, okay, I'll open the row. Or
Oh,
be
yeah, we
like,
say that a lot.
yeah,
I'll
we say-
open.
yeah, exactly. So
I'll finish.
yeah, so we take
okay.
ownership. If one person's feeling better than the other, then we say, okay, I'll open this. You close it out. Or we're gonna go 20 meters out, 20 meters swap for the burpee broad jumps, whatever it might be.
So it's like
Yeah.
even like just the phrasing and the words that you use, because it's so you've used it before so many times, the understanding is really quick.
Yeah. So I think even if Karan doesn't look like he's flagging, if I feel good, I'll just say I'm feeling good. So
Okay.
if he happens to be feeling a bit like, okay, maybe I can take a step back, then I can take over. But I think, like, to your point, can we show up as a doubles team specifically and do well? Yes, you can, but not as well as if you've done races together.
Right.
I think every time we do it, it gets easier and it gets better. And also, like, there's just something about competing as a team where you're very vulnerable with each other. I mean, the three of us have competed together before.
That's right.
Even if you're not sitting down and getting to know each other, is something where you're really putting like a lot of trust in someone, and that's how you are building your friendship. So it's not necessarily like, okay, I know what Karan's favorite color is, which I actually don't.
It's blue and black.
Black is not a color. It's a shade.
It's blue.
Okay. What's mine?
Pink.
That's not right.
Green.
Okay, we'll talk after.
This partnership has ended.
Yeah. We're not going to Chicago anymore. I think like that our friendship that's where the trust comes from. It's sort of like knowing that we have had each other's backs before.
So, I mean, just like any other good partnership, it's like the experience, the ups and downs, and really being able to solidify because of experience, right? And those being the triggers to teach. That's how you guys have been really able to nail down your communication, your strategy, and pacing. And on that note, and this one's like I'm curious about how you work this out, because there are going to be people who just want to do doubles with their best friend or with their partner and be able to finish it and have a good time together and share that memory, where that's part of the experience that you guys get to have as friends. But one thing that's important too is you guys have ambitions and you guys want to make podium, or you guys want to improve your time. If you guys have that and you have a strategy for it, but you have to adjust because someone is getting a stitch or someone's getting a cramp or someone just couldn't do what you guys agreed upon doing, but you still have that goal in mind. When you make that adjustment, do you make that adjustment with the idea of, okay, we can make up time here? Or do you make the adjustment of, okay, we need to throw in the towel for whatever goal that was? Like, what does that look like in the middle of a race?
It's happened. It's happened. I think in every race, like you're gonna have a plan until you get smacked in the face. And it's like, okay, that plan's out the window.
Yeah.
I think we're both very good at like accepting the situation immediately and being like, okay, my partner is in the hurt locker, or my partner is going through something right now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put my head down and do the work. So we just put our head down and get the work done.
Okay.
And then that would then mean that person who is now covering for the other partner is now expending more energy and blowing up, to speak of, a bit more. And that means the next round will probably slow down. But that happens, and you got to adapt on the fly, and make adjustments to your run pace after that station, if you need to.
As in, you're going to have to pick up the pace on the run, or
You can. I think it's more, we never throw in the towel because there's no point, right? You still always want to do your best. I think there was one race where we were really, really close to achieving under 1 hour 10, which is sort of what we had benchmarked at the time. And we didn't make it, which of course it's always disappointing when you don't meet a goal. But I think when you have a partnership, you can't point fingers or blame anybody. Like, that's just not how it works. The point is, okay, well, where can we have improved? Could we have improved? Sometimes you just can't, right? Like, you can't control what your body does. There are HYROX races that are sort of faster and slower than others. So when we raced in Singapore, a lot of the average times were a lot slower because it was an open air stadium and it was so hot, like very, very hot, which actually worked to our advantage because we were used to it. But you can't control things. You can try to pick up, if you can, where your partner is not feeling great. So yes, there has been times where one of us is cramped and the other one sort of is, okay, I'll take more stuff. Even if you know you're going to miss your goal, I don't think we've ever looked at each other and been like, right, let's just sort of sack it off and get it done. It's more like, let's still see how good we can do and how close we can get. And then after we're done, we'll do a postmortem, as it were, and think like, okay, next race, we'll have the same goal. And if there is something that we could have changed, because sometimes there's not, then what are we going to do to get there?
Now, with all races being as equal as possible. Like you said yourself, Singapore is a different beast because it's open air and it's, depending on the time of year, it can be a very oppressive run. But because you're doing the same distance, the same stations, the goal would be naturally to get better times with each race that you guys log in.
Yeah.
Has progress for you guys been linear, or has it been up and down? Have you guys made huge strides in some races, or is it all over the place? What does your guys' progress as a team look like?
I think for our times, we went 113 in our first race. And
Your first ever race, 113.
Yeah, we went 113 in our first, and that was the race that we ended up podiuming, and that secured our world's ticket. And then we went 110, and we went 110 again. So we did double 110 last year in Singapore again, and then Hong Kong, and then we ended up with 112 in Taipei. So it has been, we progressed, and then we sort of dipped. But that was a good reality check to just see. It was meant to be a baseline check to see where we are as a team and where our fitness levels are, so that now we can ramp up to Bangkok and Chicago. But like Rue said, tracks are different. Some tracks are actually longer than others because some
more than 1,000 meters.
Yes, more give or take, because it gets busy now. They kind of have a switch for some of the races. So
Switch?
it's kind of like a lane that they will switch in and out. And so if you switch onto the inside, it's obviously going to be shorter because you're running closer to the circuit, like any track. If you miss that, then you're on the outside, which means you're probably running an additional 20 meters.
And you wouldn't know until that moment.
You wouldn't know. It's basically to control traffic for spectators coming in and out.
I see.
And also, if you're always running close to the inside anyway, regardless of a switch, you're naturally running a shorter distance anyway. So we try to hug the inside, but you also don't want to be in the way of people who are trying to overtake you. And there's a lot of people traffic. We've definitely had moments of frustration with the amount of people traffic there is. Karan is a lot more polite than me.
You're talking about those 1K runs because there's tight turns, right?
Yeah, I have road rage when it comes to racing.
Okay.
And he's often had to apologize for my
so
behavior.
she's like steaming through, and I'm running behind her and be like, sorry, thank you.
Are there hard and fast rules of what kind of jostling is allowed in a HYROX race, knowing that it is going to be tight
I'm not
turns?
out here there throwing punches, Chris. Like, get out of my way.
I was thinking not throwing bench. I was thinking more like roller derby, right? Where it's just like, what happens.
I think to some extent, yes.
But one thing that HYROX needs to get better at is, or like educating the general public or people that take part in HYROX, is like slow and fast lanes. There are slow and fast lanes, but
implied or clear?
It's clear. There's a line running through the middle of the running track.
Oh, okay.
But people don't, I don't know if it's they don't know or they just disregard it. But a lot of people run on the inside of the track, which is the fast lane. And we are very often forced to go outside, overtake, and then come back in. And we're kind of race savvy, and we have our ears and eyes open, and people who are faster than us, they say on your right, and then we move to our left, and we do the same thing as well. If we want to overtake, we say on your right, but the people that are in the fast lane and they're slow, they don't know what on your right means, and they just stay where they are.
Or sometimes they'll just stop and then turn
running
to see,
no.
he's talking to me.
I had this assumption that when you're doing a race and you're lined up at the starting line, you're with people who have the same amount of experience.
That's a good point. So
is that true, or is it?
I'm not sure how their formula works.
Yeah, it depends race to race. So initially last year, I think a race or two where we had we put in our predicted time. They put us in. It was competitive times together.
And to that point, it would be people who would be aware of the lane overtaking.
You'd hope so.
Yes, but then in the Taipei race, it was ordered with, I think, our surnames.
Was it?
I think it was ordered through our surnames. So yeah, you have a mix, and like in Hong Kong, I think it was was it through your age category?
Yeah, and
that
category? Being said, Chris, like because HYROX is sort of stacked over 2 days, it's not only your heat on the track at any one given time, right? So you could have the stragglers from sort of two categories before. So say women's open, then men's open. This is just an example. And then mixed doubles. You could still have women's open racers racing. So it's not just, okay, there's 8 sets of pairs running at any one given time. That would be a dream. There is sort of everybody. It's a free for all out there.
Yeah, because the waves, flow through the functional stations, but then everyone's on the track, right? Because the waves will come out of the functional station and be on the track at the same time. So you have multiple waves, different categories, race categories, running on the track at the same time. So, I mean, going back and tying up the point of like, every race is not exactly 8 kilometers.
Okay.
You know, things like switching in and out because of spectators, things like traffic on the racetrack itself because of the crowd of participants. Things like the rock zone. Some races have a longer rock zone, and some are more compressed and compact. So the shorter rock zone, you can save time there. Literally, we've had rock zone times where
These zones are still timed, right?
yeah, exactly. It's all part of your time. Your run time will, let's say, your run splits are when you exit the out arch and enter the in arch, and your functional station time does not start until you enter the arch for that functional station.
I see.
But there's still distance to make up and get out from the in and out arches to the functional station. So depending on the length of the rock zones, you're losing time there. We've had races where we had our rock zone time be 3.5 minutes. We've also had races where we had our rock zone time be 5.5 minutes.
Okay.
So that's like 2 minutes right there. And then of course, thinking about humidity, whether it's indoors, outdoors. So all of this factors into it just not being consistently 8K.
Yeah.
So you got to actually take it race by race,
Right,
and see what, generally across the board, are the race times slower or faster.
Okay. I mean, this sounds like, this is all to say that you guys have had the advantage of experience to know these kinds of things and to have those kinds of expectations going into it, so it doesn't throw you for a loop. And if these frustrations happen on a race, it's like, well, it's not like we've never been here before. You just deal with it in the moment, right?
Yeah.
And so if you want to do better, just like with any other sport, you got to just log in your hours in practice and on the event stage itself. That way, the things that come up as a surprise the first time, the second, third, fourth time it comes around, it's just like, well, we've done this before and it didn't blow up the race.
It's time to lock in.
Yeah, lock in, exactly.
We're getting locked in.
There's one question that I have that's, for me, comes from a personal place that I think a person who might be hesitant to joining a team of 4 or a partners with someone that they don't know, with their romantic partner or whatever, is you were talking about ego and, having that take over, and kind of blowing up in your face because you don't want to admit that you can't do something or that you need to take a break. Mine's like similar to that. It's more like when I'm on a team, and we've experienced this together, is like, I don't want to be a liability because I don't want to disappoint the team. In terms of like, I don't want to slow down the team because I couldn't do something. So I'm just going to try to grin and bear it as best I can and not let on that I have an ache or that I have a cramp or that I can't run at a pace that you guys are asking me to do. So, if someone has a hesitation about that because they don't want to be a liability because they think I'm not fit enough, I'm not fast enough, I'm not strong enough, what would you say to kind of overcome that type of hesitation?
I think people often forget that fitness is supposed to be fun. So for the average person who does HYROX, they're just trying to get it done. And I don't think that fitness should ever be something that you are scared to do. Of course, if you want to perform well and you want to be a high performance athlete, I will have a slightly different answer. But just for the average person, and I preach about HYROX a lot at work actually, because I do think it's a very achievable goal to do it and to do it to a place where you feel happy with yourself. Like, yes, you're not going to win, but I think that's one of the most amazing things about HYROX that maybe CrossFit lacks sometimes, is that if you do the open in CrossFit, yes, you can do great in the open, but then it comes to quarterfinals and there are a lot of people who can't do things like muscle ups, which are very high skill.
Right.
And, you're automatically knocked out the park. And sometimes for people who are, a little bit competitive, but not necessarily high performance, it's not fun. It's not fun to just be like, okay, well, I actually can't even finish this workout, so I'm just going to throw a towel in here. But like HYROX is totally doable. And even when you finish, if you haven't podiumed, it's still a great feeling. Like, okay, we did this and like I put my body through this and I got it done. And I think picking a partner who makes you feel that way too is super important. But I think it's also just important to recognize that like you don't have to reach a certain level of fitness first and then do HYROX. You can do it as your goal to achieving something to be fit. And like, of course you have to be smart with yourself and like, okay, I can't run 4-minute kilometers. I can only run 7 minutes, but that's totally achievable. And when we were in Taiwan, I just felt this like great sense of joy, even though it wasn't our best race. We were queuing up for a photo and there was a guy who was taking a selfie with his time. And he had the biggest smile on his face as if he had won the lottery. And he was so chuffed with himself and like huge smile, and his family was there. And his time was 2 hours and 35 minutes, which is not competitive in any way, shape, or form. But you would have not been able to tell that from just looking at his face. It was just like, I did it. Look what I did. It's so amazing. And I think that's what's so good about HYROX and what draws so many people to do it is because you can.
Yeah. It's like akin to doing, your first half marathon or first full marathon.
Yeah. Or even a 5K, like you're never going to be Kipchoge, but like you can run the same race as Kipchoge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think for the first time HYROXer, it's just showing to yourself and proving to yourself what you can achieve, because HYROX is a 1 hour to 90-minute race, or upwards of that, and showing yourself that you can complete it. Because when you're starting, from let's say square one, 8 weeks out, 12 weeks out, you sign up for a race, you don't know if you can finish it. Just the act of completing it fills you with a sense of pride and achievement, knowing what your body can achieve if you put your mind to it and you put the necessary training in. But after the first race, it's the beauty of HYROX and why it's taken off around the world is because it's standardized. And as humans, we crave progress. And at the end of the day, if you do multiple races, right, you can measure yourself against yourself from the previous race, right? You can see, you have data to see, what your run split times were for each kilometer in race 1 versus what your run split times were in race 2 or race 10. Right. And as long as you're progressing, doesn't matter if you're finishing in a 1 hour 50 time, if you'll finish your next race in 1 hour 40, that's a 10-minute improvement. That's huge. That's significant. Right. So it's not necessarily about competing with, the podium or the others, but like competing with yourself, proving to yourself first that what your body can achieve if you put your mind to it, but then next proving that if you put the work in, you can actually keep improving and making progress. I think as humans, we all crave progress. So it's just like pitting yourself against yourself.
Yeah.
So that's what it boils down to, right? It's like what you're saying is don't forget that this is meant to be fun.
Yes.
And don't forget that you're just competing against yourself.
Yeah.
And
I mean, even for us as a partnership, right? We know we're not international HYROX. Well, technically we are international HYROX athletes. I mean, more
World
like
champs, baby.
we're never.
Singapore, Bangkok.
Okay, guys.
Chicago.
I mean, we are never going to be the #1 Asian HYROX champs. We know that. We have other priorities. There are people who are out there who are just simply better than us. That's a fact of life. But Karan and I want to get better at the things that we want to get better at. And we recognize we're not the best of the best, but we don't care. We want to do right by each other as partners, and we want to make progress where we can with our fitness, and we have a goal in mind, but it's not to win the world championships. It's a time goal. Every time get better. Every time maybe take a few minutes off and make sure that we are committing to being the best partnership that we can be and to ourselves as athletes. But like, we have no expectation that we're going to be the #1 champions forever,
I mean, that's a great example. We're talking about, just a vague example. We can just take ourselves, right? We're not going to be competitive at Worlds. We're competitive in the Asian circuit. We can shoot for podium times. But when we get to Worlds, we're going to have mixed doubles running, close to a sub 60, anywhere between a 58 to a 63, 64. And that's competitive. For us, then that becomes our goal of what I just said, of like, just PBing or PRing our times together. And that's the journey and the beauty of it, of like getting faster with each race, knowing that we're improving together, and we're getting stronger, not just individually, but also as a partnership.
What is your goal for Chicago, if you don't mind me asking?
68.
68. If you see
not 69.
If you
no,
see,
I saw.
You saw that? Okay, cool.
So on the board it says Karan's goal is sub 69 with Rue, which I find kind of dodgy. It looks dodgy.
It's nice.
It was meant in a joke. But no, but getting back on track.
We're on track, baby.
We've been targeting sub 70 for a while.
Okay.
You know, breaking into the 60s.
Yeah.
And I think we can definitely get, let's say, sub 68.
Awesome.
And that's the goal.
Well, I look forward to following your guys' progress as we get to, well, Bangkok is going to be a tune-up, but then here we go with Chicago in 8 weeks' time.
Yes.
To finish, I do have a game show round.
Oh boy.
I have a question, and when I raise my hand, you will say either Karan or Rue. The answer is either Karan or Rue.
Wait, so we raise our hand or?
I raise my hand, meaning that as soon as I raise my hand, you say the name.
Oh, okay.
Together.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Same time.
Right. For example, as an example, whose favorite color is black and blue?
Karan.
You gotta
Why
wait.
did it take
you gotta
you
wait.
so-
You gotta wait for my hand to raise. That way you guys can say at the
I
same
was like,
time.
why did
Jump
you
the
take
gun.
so long to
Yeah.
answer?
That's right.
2-minute penalty.
Sorry.
Again, another example. Who is the corporate girly?
Rue.
Rue.
There we go.
Oh, good.
There we go. Okay, number one. Who has the better strategy?
Karan.
Who has more fun?
Rue.
Who is most likely to arrive at the starting line on time?
Rue.
Who is most likely to arrive at the bar on time?
Rue.
Who needs more toilet breaks?
Karan.
I had to think about that one.
Oh, you guys, you think you're even 50-50?
Definitely me.
I don't
To the toilet
know.
like at least 3
Does Karan not tell you that he has to poop?
The
Does
thing-
Karan make you think that he doesn't poop at all? Is that
No,
where you
no,
guys are
we're
in a
very honest
relationship?
about that
Oh,
kind of
okay.
thing. But I would say, you know, it's not a shade to me being on time for the bar or HYROX because Karan is literally never on time for anything.
Yeah, okay.
He showed up to a race 30 minutes before, and our warm up was a 400-meter row because
That
this
tracks.
man shows up
Tracks.
almost an hour late and then says, I need a coffee. And then after the coffee, what happens? I need a poo. And then what? We have
Podium that race.
we podium. But we only so maybe less really is more. But
Yeah.
Karan is never on time for anything.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that, you know, he is comfortable letting you know that the man does poop.
No, he does. I have no qualms about that.
Who needs more deodorant?
Karan.
Did you have to think about that?
Yeah, I think about that.
Excuse you.
Okay, I'm going to say my name. I sweat a lot, but I don't stink. I don't sweat. I'm not saying that you do. I'm just saying that my
He-
But
Definitely-
it's literally one or the other.
one or the other. Fair. Okay. She's a lady, so Karan.
Ladies can stink too.
Yeah. Yeah, I could stink.
Not my lady, Laura, if you're listening.
Congrats
my
for
wife.
making it this far.
I know.
My wife.
Who has better fashion sense?
Rue.
Rue.
Who is going to be the first person to cross the finish line?
Rue.
Do you want to know the story?
I thought you guys were supposed to have a tradition of holding hands crossing the finish line.
That was not the tradition. That's against tradition.
But I thought that was the understanding.
No,
between the-
that's what everybody else does. They want to get this like cute little
okay.
race photo holding
Okay.
hands. Yay.
And then Rue's
We're
like,
competitive.
Yeah.
The timer stops when one person crosses the line.
okay.
Yeah. So one time we had this great plan. Like, okay, it was our first race. He said, "You wanna go or you wanna cross together?" I said, "Let's cross together. It's great. We're a partner." The last ball went up. I said, "See ya." And the finishing photo is me like this, and Karan in the background.
Yes, I want to see that at Worlds. Last question. I don't know why I'm ending on this one. Who is the first to go down with a cramp?
Karan.
All right. Karan, Rue, good luck at Chicago Worlds. Thank you for this awesome podcast episode. And yeah, thank you for joining me on the couch today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Tuazan. It was a good podcast. I enjoyed that.
Good. You sound surprised.
Why? You had to say that.
HYROX, more like
Can we
BYROX.
cut it before he said that?
Before we say goodbye, here's one crazy statistic for you. Did you know that almost 40% of people who listen to the show don't actually subscribe to it? Now, I didn't think that was a big deal until I actually learned about the power of hitting subscribe. For you, the listener, you get to stay up to date when we drop episodes on a weekly basis. But for us as a podcast, it really helps our visibility and helps us attract great brands and great listeners to help grow this podcast. So if you enjoyed this episode or you're a big fan of the show, please do us a massive favor and hit subscribe. Thank you so much.